You have swatted at 3 of them today. One landed on your sandwich, rubbed its hands together like it was plotting, and you reached for the nearest magazine. Congratulations! You just tried to murder one of the planet's unpaid sanitation workers. You did not decide flies were disgusting. Nobody sat you down and explained them. But here is the part nobody mentions. Pull every fly off this planet, and the whole thing starts to rot, literally. No cleanup crew. No pollination for your favorite plants. No chocolate. Just piles of things that were supposed to disappear sitting there. So why does the bug you hate the most turn out to be the one thing holding the food web together? Start with the scale because it's worse than you think. There are somewhere between 110,000 and 160,000 named fly species, the order Diptera. And the people who count them agree the real number runs far higher, still uncounted, still being described every year. That's not a nuisance, that's a workforce. Call it what it actually is. Earth's cleanup department, clocked in around the clock, and it has never once asked you for a paycheck. Every single fly is running a job you never approved, never noticed, and would absolutely refuse to do yourself. $12 says you can't name 3 of those jobs. Let's fix that. Here's the first shift on the roster. Pollination, you think bees, obviously, because bees have a publicist. But hoverflies and those little wasp mimics idling over your garden are the second most important pollinators on the whole planet, right behind bees. And they migrate distances no bee would bother crossing. They work your apples, your strawberries, your onions. Nobody mails them a thank you card. The cleanup department, it turns out, moonlights on the day shift, too. The flies were on the clock the whole time. Then there's chocolate, and this one is personal. Cacao flowers are so tiny and so strangely built that bees can't work them at all. The parts don't line up. The only thing on Earth that can pollinate cacao is a biting midge barely a millimeter long from the genus Forcipomyia, grinding away in the damp shade at dawn. No midge, no pollinated cacao flower, no cocoa pod, no chocolate bar. Mangoes lean on flies, too. So every time you have taken a swing at one near your kitchen, you were technically threatening dessert. Now the job they are famous for hating. Something dies in the woods. Minutes later, not hours, minutes, a blowfly has already found it, homing in on the very first molecules of decay from a stunning distance away. It lays eggs. The maggots hatch and strip the body down to clean bone while dung flies work the other end, breaking down waste and handing nitrogen back to the soil so plants can grow in it again. Take that crew off the schedule and the dead don't leave. They pile up. Carcasses, droppings, all of it, sitting exactly where it fell, going absolutely nowhere. The flies were on the clock the whole time. And here's where it gets stupid. Flies aren't only the disposal shift, they're also lunch. Fly larvae and adults feed birds, bats, frogs, spiders, and fish. Midge larvae alone can hit tens of thousands per square meter of lake bed, which is exactly why entire freshwater food chains are stacked on top of them. So pull the flies and you starve everything that eats flies, then everything that eats those. Yank the bottom brick and the tower doesn't care how tall it used to be. The flies were on the clock the whole time. And this is not a thought experiment anymore. In 2017, a long-running study out of Germany, run partly by the Krefeld Entomological Society, measured flying insect biomass inside protected nature reserves and found it had dropped by more than 75% in 27 years. Flies included. Fewer flies means fewer birds, thinner soil, weaker pollination, the whole crew showing up short-staffed at once. You're watching a live test of what happens when the cleanup department starts calling in sick and the early reviews are not great. So here's the belief actually worth killing, that flies are filthy little disease machines with no purpose, and that the world would run cleaner without them. Half of that is wrong, and the useful half is backwards. In 2004, the FDA cleared sterile blowfly maggots as an approved medical device. Real doctors in real hospitals set them on open wounds because they eat dead tissue, leave the living tissue completely alone, and scrub out infections that antibiotics already gave up on. Same insect, different angle. Forensic investigators read blowfly colonization on a body to pin down time of death, accurate to within hours. The thing you find repulsive is a surgical tool and an eyewitness. We spent a very long time filing that under pest, which raises a different, dumber question. Why the fly specifically? Why does the cleanup crew have to be the one animal you can't stand to look at? You could picture a nicer version, some tidy, cute little decomposer that only shows up when invited and never lands on your food. Evolution had a couple 100 million years to build that polite little cleaner. It never did. That animal doesn't exist. And here's the reason it can't. The exact trait that makes you gag, landing on rot, Eating decay, breeding in the stuff every other animal refuses to touch, is the entire reason they are load-bearing. You can't staff a sanitation department with animals that are picky. Rewrite the fly to be less revolting, and you have just fired the only worker who reliably shows up. The disgust is not a design flaw, it's the job description. We spent centuries calling them vermin, and only noticed the payroll the second we tried to imagine the invoice. The flies were on the clock the whole time. So the bug you hate the most turns out to be the one thing quietly holding your soil, your food web, and your chocolate together on a shift that never clocks out. And here's the part that should sting a little. We are the only animal on this planet that swats at its own janitors and files it under hygiene. The flies never needed us to understand them, or thank them, or even leave them alone. They just needed us to stop reaching for the magazine long enough to let them finish. Now you know. Sorry,